Hey everyone, it's Kale from Path to Pinnacle, and as I mentioned in one of my first videos on my channel of how to save thousands of dollars on free spare and how I do it, I mentioned that low volatility slots are a great way to earn offers, or a great way to get a lot of coin in without as much risk as their higher volatility cousins, the higher volatility versions. So in this video, I'm going to go over high volatility versus low volatility slots, what you want to look for to be able to tell the difference in a high volatility versus a low volatility version. I'm going to show lots of different slot examples. I'm going to show pay tables. I'm going to show different features on there, so stick around for that. I'm also going to get into video poker and video poker volatility for those interested in that. And finally, as a bonus, I'm going to do reels. So when the slot plays out in lines versus reels, what the difference is, which one's higher volatility versus low. And so go ahead and stay tuned and get ready for a good video here. So starting off, we have Huff and even more Puff, right? This is an example of a very high volatility machine. And what that means is that when you're playing, you're very likely to have large swings, whether upward or downward. Your money is not going to kind of be steady. Generally, it's going to be big periods of feast and famine. So for instance, when you're spinning on this game, there's all kinds of bet size choices. This is done in real ways, but there's lots of features here. The more features, right, the more the features are built into the payback of the game. So you might trigger any of the features, you might trigger none of the features, but there's less pay in what's called the base game. Base game just being when you're playing, the line hits that you're getting, that's going to be the majority of spins. You're not going to hit a feature, so you want to be getting line hits back if you want your money to be lasting longer in a low volatility. On a high volatility, you're not getting a lot of hits back. So in this game, you also have multiple features. So as you can see here, we have the hats feature, right? So 6 of these will do a hold a spin, and you also have the buzzsaw feature. So 3 of these will be a different kind of bonus where you'll get to spin the wheel. Then even when you hit the buzzsaw feature and you spin the wheel, in this game, there's multiple wheels, right? There's multiple progressives you can win, and you can get a wheel spin and still get a bad feature, or you can get a wheel and get upgraded and then get like amazing features or get amazing progressives, right? But because there's a large range in the distribution of the possible outcomes, it makes it a high volatility game because there are so many different possibilities. There's a huge range of really bad to really, really good. And on any given day, any given session, any given week, any given cruise, right? You have no idea what you're gonna get. It could be really good. It could be really bad. And if that excites you or that's interesting, great. But if you want your money to last a long time, that's not really conducive to that. So if we go into the rules here, it goes through everything, and the more features basically that you find on here: wheel feature upgrade, buzzsaw feature upgrade, mega hat feature, mega mansion feature, super mansion feature. As you can see, the more features there are, the more range of possibilities. So let's go ahead and move on from this game and find an example of a lower volatility slot that does not have so many features and will not have so many different outcomes. This actually has one pay line, right? So while in general this looks like a lower volatility slot than the previous one, in many ways it is, right? Because these are all base game line hits that you can hit. There's one progressive, but the other thing I want you to consider is pay lines, right? Because you could hit 777 all over the place, but if they aren't hit on the specific pay line, you don't get paid out. So while this is an older machine, and people tend to say older machines tend to have lower volatility, there are aspects that would make this a high volatility machine, and that's one single pay line makes it high volatility as well. So looks can be deceiving. I still think this is a lower volatility machine than Huff and Even More Puff, but the original Huff and Puff, for example, would be lower volatility than Huff and Even More Puff, because they make the volatility is kind of more exciting for a lot of players because you can win big betting smaller, but you can also lose big betting smaller. So this right here, double gold, will be lower volatility than that, but still high volatility in certain ways. So I'm gonna go to even lower volatility machine. Just because I just referenced it in the last clip, this is Huff and More Puff, not Huff and Even More Puff. And you can see it's lower volatility because there's only one wheel. There's still multiple features, but if you unlock a certain feature, and then there's no golden buzzsaw. So again, similar base game. If you like the mechanics of this game, there's still versions that are higher and lower volatility. Still a high volatility game, but significantly lower than the newest version, Huff and Even More Puff, just because it has fewer features. All right, on to the next game here. At our next even lower volatility machine, featuring Spitfire multipliers, triple red hot 777 per game. So what makes this more old school looking, even with the pull handle, real slot machines, real REEL, right? These old school reels, is that it has 5 pay lines as opposed to just 1. So instead of just being able to win down the middle, now you can, the top 3, the middle 3, the bottom 3, and then the 2 diagonals, right? So as we see in the game rules here, there's also no super large progressive. That one had an $8,000 progressive up top. Also, if we look at bet size amounts, the max bet is 250 credits at a penny, so $2.50. The max bet on the other machine was, since it was a dollar machine, was much higher. It was close to $10. So that's the other thing you can do, is bet to reduce your volatility, is to bet fewer credits, bet smaller, and play for longer, right? Because that also reduces your variability. If you're gonna put a certain amount of coin in to earn a certain number of points, if you play twice as long on half the bet size, the volatility will be less than if you play half as long as double the bet size, right? The smaller your bet size, the smaller your volatility in general as well over that same sample size, that same amount of coin in. So if you're playing for points, whether it be on land or at sea or anywhere else where there's a casino, the smaller your bet size, the lower the volatility if you're planning to play the same amount of actual coin in. So anyway, if we look at the game rules here, we can actually show the pay lines. See, that's the pay lines I was just talking about. But because there's 5 times as many pay lines as before, you're getting a lot more hits throughout your play session, which replenishes the amount of money you have in the machine more often, so your money will last longer in theory, okay? So this would be an example of a game like this. Even the game next to it, also similar, right? Again, you can bet as small as a nickel on here. This is 25 cents, but then you start to get up to max bet, still only 250. So again, playing this, even if you play at a faster speed to get more points, playing at a faster speed on a smaller bet is better than playing at a slower speed at a larger bet in terms of volatility. Now, play what you like, do what you like, but in general, these are just the kind of differentiations I'm letting you know. So again, this is a 5-line pair, very similar to this game. But if we start to go over to some of these similar looking machines, this machine right here, for example, has a slightly higher volatility in general because 1, there's progressives up top, 2, there's a wheel spin bonus, and so maybe that's a lot more fun and stuff like that. That's great. But in general, if we're just talking in terms of volatility, a machine like this is going to have higher volatility. Same with something like this. Anything with a wheel feature, if it has a wheel feature compared to if it doesn't have a wheel feature, if it has progressives compared to when it doesn't have progressives, like if we look over at a video slot like this, a lot of video slots will have these big progressives up here, especially when they have very large grand jackpots. A certain amount of the payout has to go into that grand jackpot, right? So it comes out of the base game. It comes out of the line hits you're getting, and the line hits are what keep you in the game as you wait for the progressives, as you wait for the big bonuses, as you wait for things like that. So in the meantime, the volatility increases so that the base game pays less and less often, and that you end up noticing over time if you're playing a large amount of points over large sessions. So I'm gonna go now to the final, what I would say the lowest volatility type of machine, and I'll meet you there. Here we are at pretty much the final boss in low volatility is what I would consider. So I heart triple diamond free games. So again, it doesn't have to be this particular machine, but I'm just showing you some different facets that would make it a lower volatility machine versus the previous one. So again, looks pretty similar to the one we just played. Looks pretty similar to the original real machine that we saw that was dollar denomination. This one is penny denomination. But if we see down here, the difference that makes this lower volatility in a lot of ways is 20 lines, right? And you can still, on this machine, it actually has a larger max bet, where the max bet can be up to $10 a spin, 1,000 credits at 20 lines. But even just playing 20 lines, you can play as low as 40 cents and as high as $10, but you don't have the big progressives up top. Look at look how few symbols there are in terms of different combinations of payout. This just means there's lots of payback opportunities. There's lots of, hey, getting my full bet back, getting my bet back, getting half my bet back, getting 2/3 my bet back, getting, bets that pay 3 times my bet. It's not all dead spin, dead spin, dead spin, miss, 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 and then from there, every once in a while have a bonus, and then the bonus might be good, might be bad, but dead spin, dead spin, dead spin, bonus. And sometimes really good bonus. Sometimes you have a bonus on certain games like Buffalo Machines, on certain games like Dancing Drums or Huff and Even More Puff, where you have a bonus and you're very excited and you're like, oh great, I just spun this for a long time, finally my bonus, and then it pays back very little. Buffalo is absolutely known for that, where you get $0 bonuses sometimes. Now sometimes they're absolutely massive, but sometimes they're absolutely terrible. So anyway, this is what I would say is a good baseline for a machine that is very low volatility if you want your money to last very long. All this being said, if you do not enjoy playing a machine like this, and you're in the casino because you like playing, and you're playing within your budget and within your means and all that kind of stuff, then of course it makes sense to play the games that you like, play the games that you enjoy, but I recommend sticking within your budget, of course. That's the most important, is to play responsibly and to, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. If you don't enjoy it, stay out of the casino, really. It's not worth it if you don't enjoy it. There's a lot of downside to it. So, all those disclaimers aside, please go ahead and take this information and decide if you want to play lower volatility or higher volatility. But here are some examples of just some kind of games here. Now, outside of slot machines, there's also video poker, and there's also a ton of volatility involved in video poker in general, and there's a ton of variability in the volatility of different video poker you can play. So here we have just a standard single line video poker, quarter denomination, jacks or better, which jacks or better is the lowest volatility form of video poker you can play. Now, if you don't know video poker strategy for the specific game you're playing, it's probably not worth playing in the first place, because all of a sudden video poker can, if you're not playing good strategy, video poker can pay worse than slots if you're really not playing correctly. But there's also different versions of video poker. So as we can see in the pay table here on video poker, jacks or better has the fewest amount of hands that you can make that pay differently, right? And we're paying on a single line here. So if we play 5 credits, like I was saying, at 25 cents, or at 5 credits per hand, then it'd be $1.25 a spin. But there are also different games on single line that you can play. So an example of a much higher volatility game is this one. Look at this pay table. Look how many different options there are to hit on here. Not only that, there's a totally different strategy employed for this version of the game versus the previous one. But volatility aside, or volatility in mind, there's some much bigger hits you can have on this. So on jacks or better, basically the big hit is Royal Flush. Straight Flush and 4 of a kind also pay pretty well, right? But on double bonus, Royal Flush pays the same as jacks or better, but then any 4 aces with a 2, 3, or 4, or what they call a kicker, is worth half as much as a Royal Flush. And any 4 of a kind are worth quite a bit more than the 4 of a kinds on jacks or better. At the same time, the 2 pair and the lower values, the ones you hit way more often, are worth a lot less. So that means there's a lot more volatility in this version of video poker. Now, there's other ways to reduce volatility. So let's say you normally play, 5 $5 a hand video poker on dollars instead. If instead, you could also reduce your volatility by increasing the number of hands you play, right? So if you still want to bet roughly $5, you can just move down your bet denomination, right, to 25 cents and play 3 hands at once instead. So this would be $1.25, $1.25, $1.25, it would be $3.75 a spin, but the volatility would be reduced by a significant amount because you'd be playing 3 different hands, right? So you might win on 1 hand, you might win on 2 hands, you might win on all 3, but just like the lower volatility slots, if you're winning on 1 hand or 2 hand, it's better than missing on all 3, like it would be on single line. You can reduce your volatility even more if respective bet size stays about the same, by going all the way up to 10 play. Now here, you get dealt a hand, and when you do your holds, you keep your holds for all the hands, and then you draw new cards for each of these hands, which reduces your volatility significantly. So for instance, if you want to play max bet on 10 play, it's actually $12.50 a spin, which is obviously more than the $5 a spin we were saying, but for the same amount of coin in, you know, if you were to play $12 or $15 a spin on single line, and you're paying the same amount on this, the volatility would be reduced by a ton. So these are just little tips that you can use to keep that in mind for video poker. Something like super times pay, where you're paying an extra coin, adds a lot more volatility. So again, it matters what game you're playing. So double bonus on super times pay would even be more volatile. Ultimate X can be very volatile because you're dependent on multipliers. So things like that to keep in mind with video poker. If you just play baseline jacks or better, that's already going to be low volatility. But if you play jacks or better, which is the lowest volatility version of video poker on the largest number of hands, and you're not paying a premium like in super times pay, that's going to be the lowest volatility video poker. And so if you're trying to earn points and you're trying to get a lot of coin in, you can do so in ways that are lower volatility for the same amount. Like you're gonna bet big anyway. If you bet big on a low volatility where it's spread out over 10 hands, it's gonna reduce your variance quite a bit relative to betting just a single line and playing a single line at dollars, for instance, you know, or a single line at $2, this would be $10 a spin. Whereas if you shifted to 10 play jacks or better, this would be $12.50 a spin, but your money would still last a lot longer playing $12.50 a spin 10 hands than $10 a spin single line, single hand. So there's a little primer for video poker volatility, and the tenets carry through for slot machines as well. Continuing on with what we were talking about remember we talked about Huff and Even More Puff earlier. This is a Power 4 version. So going off of what I was just talking about with video poker and increasing the number of hands to reduce volatility and variance, same type of thing here. So if we assume the bet size is the same, Huff and Even More Puff Power 4, betting $2 here, is like betting 50 cents a screen, which would be a lot less volatility than betting $2 on a single line Huff and Puff. So another way to do it, so you can bet all the way down. I mean, the minimum bet is 200 credits at a penny, so $2. So you could increase your bet size and play 4 screens at the same time to reduce your volatility, instead of playing $8 a spin on Huff and Even More Puff single line. You do it over 4, it's smaller bets. Now, if you do only $2 a spin and you play 4 times as fast, 4 times as quickly, you'll also get the same amount of coin in as you would playing $8, but the volatility will be significantly reduced. So yeah, these are just, again, this is still in general the base game itself. Huff and Puff, Huff and Even More Puff is a high volatility game in general, but this is probably their answer to reduce some of that volatility, because some of these features people find very fun and things like that. They like to spin the wheel, but the other game single line can be so brutal in terms of volatility that this is probably the answer they came out with. But another way to reduce your volatility, if you like Huff and even more Puff, is to play the Power 4 version instead. So this is a video reel, Stinkin' Rich, Skunks Gone Wild. And what I just wanted to point out on this one, there are progressives and there are different features, but you can play up to 100 lines, right? 100 lines. What's the other features? So for video reels, 100 lines is generally a lot. So the more lines in general, the lower volatility. So I just want to point out that there are some video reel slots that have 100 lines, and 100 lines is much lower volatility than, say, 25 lines or 15 lines or the dreaded 5 lines that a lot of higher denomination things like Dragon Link and other types of larger bet games will jump to lower lines at a higher denomination. And I'll show you an example. Bonus, I want to talk about real ways, REEL ways, versus lines. So I just talked about how more lines, when you have a line type of payout schedule, more lines equals lower volatility. But reels in general are going to be even lower volatility than lines. So for a line hit, it needs to go across a correct one of the number of lines that the game offers. So you need the symbols to line up on pay lines in order to receive a hit, in order to receive money back. But with reels, it's different. So as we can see right here, go into here, go into the game rules. With reels, it just pays left to right. So if you have a symbol here on reel 1 and on reel 2 and on reel 3 and on reel 4 and on reel 5, then it's 5 of a kind. Doesn't matter what kind of formation they're in. As long as you have one of the symbols on each of the reels, then it's going to be 5 of a kind, right? So it says all wins begin with the leftmost reel and play left to right on adjacent reels except for scatters, right? All wins shown with the bet multiplier at 1. So for instance, if you get this best symbol here and you have them on reel 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in whatever order, it'll pay out 150 credits. Now if there's 2 per each, if it's 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, then this is multiplied by 2 additionally, because to get 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 will get you 150. And then from there, the reels stack up. So if it's 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, you get a full multiplier of that times 2. If it's 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, it's the 5 of a kind times 2 times 2. If it's 2, 3, 1, 1, 1, it'd be the 5 of a kind payout times 2 times 3, so 6 times your bet. That's why when you have big stacks of Buffalo or something else like that, they pay so much, is because it's paid on a real pay schedule and they're multiplied. Sometimes people are like, oh, 5 of a kind Buffalo, that's great, but it's just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. That's not nearly as great as 5 of a kind Buffalo 2, 3, 4, 2, 5, because then it'd be a 5 of a kind hit times 2 times 3 times 4 times 2 times 5. And obviously once you get all those multipliers going, it can be a massive hit in that kind of way. So I just wanted to do a quick primer on reels versus ways. In general, ways, especially when they stack up and become something like when they were 405 ways, but they build all the way up to a much larger amount, like it showed here, for example, 7776. It means when you see the reels expand all the way up, the number of possibility of pays increases greatly because there's more real estate on the reels, right? There's more areas, right? So we talk about mega reels here, building all the way up to 776. Look how many more reels there are here when it's split up as opposed to when it's not. So when they say 7776 ways, 7776 ways to win combinations of different pays that could be on those lines. So ways in general, in a vacuum, are going to be lower volatility than lines, because again, if you're playing 5 line, you might have a great thing and you're like, oh, that's not a hit. You know, if it's not on a pay line, it's not. But on reels, it's always a hit if you have at least 3 of a kind in a row in general. So again, these are just things to keep in mind. These 3 are real machines. So if you like that for volatility, or if you just like to not be questioning and not getting psyched out and being like, hey, I just hit a great hit, or I thought it was a great hit, but it actually didn't line up. What the heck was that? If you play a real machine, you won't run into that problem. So again, there you go. Thank you so much if you've watched all the way to the end here, and I hope you enjoyed my tutorial on volatility in slots, volatility in video poker. To recap, we went over lines, we went over lines versus reels, we went over high volatility versus low volatility, number of features, numbers of lines, numbers of credits bet, things like that. So if you really enjoyed this video, I hope you find some value in it, and if you like to play what you like to play, at least you have a little bit of knowledge of how these things might affect coin in, how they might affect how long sessions last, how they might affect things like that. So I hope that you really enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, share it with someone else who might be interested in this. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much. If you want to interact with me, do so in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.